Right, here we are. I will get started. Thanks very much for joining, everybody. I hope you're well, and welcome to today's webinar on mastering the pre-bid stage. So I'm David Biden. I'm an account director here at Advice Cloud, and today I'll be talking you through really a bunch of helpful actions and ideas that you can use to really master the all-important pre-bid stage and improve your win ratios when it comes to bidding. So I've been bidding on both government and private sector opportunities for the last 15 years. And these are really some of the practices that I've put into place to help improve win rates and really build relationships with potential buyers. So I'll take you through a quick agenda of what we'll be covering in today's session. A short introduction on who Advice Cloud are, for those of you that don't know us. And then we'll be diving into what we really mean by the pre-bid stage. So every company will have a slightly different take on pre-bid stage. So we'll just define what we mean by it here at Advice Cloud. Then we run through a number of steps that you can take, 6 of them, to improve your win rates, and how Advice Cloud team could support you and a number of customers. And then finally a Q&A where you can ask me anything about the pre-bid stage or on how you can apply it, I suppose, more specifically to your organization. So who are Advice Cloud? So we've been around for just over a decade now, enabling majority SME suppliers of tech and digital solutions to get into government via frameworks and then submit high quality bids. So many of the team here were involved in the creation and management of the UK's most prominent tech and digital frameworks. So safe to say we call ourselves specialists in the field. And as you can see here, about 71% of our clients are UK-based SMEs. And where we really add the most value is enabling organisations to navigate the sometimes complex waters of UK Gov procurement. So being framework specialists, we've just completed TS4 for a number of clients, and we're in the process of DOS 7 at the moment, as I'm sure some of you are. And then we're gearing up for G-Cloud 15 coming out on the 23rd of July, where last year we helped organisations with just over 150 listings. And we had a 100% success rate on that due to our specific Advice Cloud process. And it also means that we're able to offer 100% money back guarantee on all framework listings. But today we're here to talk about bidding, more specifically, the actions you can take pre-bid to improve your win rates. So what do we mean by pre-bid? The bid process as a whole can be broken down into 3 broad stages. So you've got pre-bid, bid, and post-bid. And pre-bid is where you carry out a range of research, planning, and actions to really ensure that you're set up to not only capture and qualify the right opportunities, but also you don't waste time when they come onto the market. We all know what it's like, a bit of a mad scramble as soon as something gets published sometimes. So if you've got the luxury of having both a sales and a bid team, then this area is predominantly led by sales and supported by the bid team, ahead of the bid process where the roles are reversed and your bid team would take the lead. So if you're in an organization where you are the sales and bid team, then hopefully today you can take away some helpful insights into how you can be more efficient in the pre-bid process. So how can pre-bid activities improve your win rates when it comes to bidding? I've broken it down into 6 stages of pre-bid. Now, depending on your available resources, you may carry out the 6 stages to varying degrees of detail. Many a time, I've been both the entire sales and bid function for early stage startups. And when that was the case, it was tempting to skip, frankly, all of these stages and cold bid a large volume of things straight from a framework. It would trick me into having a full pipeline and keep me very busy. But the reality was that after 6 months of frantic activity, I'd have very little to show for it in the way of revenue and new customers. So applying these 6 stages at all will give you a structured process to work through, and it will reduce the wasted effort on bids that you were never going to win and increase the ratio of those that you do. So where do we start? So the 6 stages that we have are offer an ICP, target account list. Let me just go back a side. Target account list, market research, competitor analysis, relationship building, my favorite bit, and then qualification. And then obviously you're into a bid process. And we're going to have another webinar about the bid process, probably in about a month's time, but you'll all get an invite for that one as well. So, starting at the top, offer an ideal customer profile. Technically, this isn't part of a pre-bid stage, but it kind of is. But I wanted to put it there and highlight it because, amazingly, I see this missed so often. So before you even consider bidding on anything or even applying to a framework, you need to have a really well-defined offer to the market and a deep understanding of who your ideal customers are. Without these, you'll simply bid the wrong things or do a really poor job of explaining what it is you do and why it's valuable. It's just a quick point there, but a very, very important one to get that nailed for your organisation. The target account list. So now that you know and understand what it is you provide, who would get the most value from it, you need to take that from a theory or a concept of people into a practical reality and define your target account list. So this is a list of all the organisations that you can provide a lot of value to with your product or service. Now, for the SMEs in the room, you might be thinking, is everyone in government? And for enterprise organisations in the room, you might be working on the list of accounts that you were handed or fought for at the last territory meeting. So everyone defines this through a different process based on their organisational structure and the product and service they provide. But if you are an SME that provides a wide-reaching product or service, such as like CRM systems and services or data consulting, then it's highly valuable to create a target account list. I see so many people wasting time trying to track hundreds of accounts across health, higher education, central, local gov, and you tie yourself in knots trying to keep up. So collate a target account list and keep it, if you can, for about 12 months. They should always be refreshed. 6 months a bit too early, 12 months about right. And these are the accounts that you're going to target and learn about and invest in. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't bid things at organisations outside of this list, but this is the list that you come back to when you think about spending marketing money or putting active effort into building relationships, and the ones that you have key alerts set up for so that you can capture the bid opportunities as early as possible. So once you've done that, next on the list is market research. So this is where you can start to look at the public sector portals, such as Contracts Finder and Find a Tender Service, both super helpful, especially when looking for specific opportunities and buyer pipelines. And when looking at larger searches, like gathering data for macro trends and analysis with tools like Stottles and Tussle can be massively valuable as well. They're paid for services, so you really need to make sure that you bake the use of them into your market research and qualification process to get an ROI, but I find them massively useful to add that layer of information about historic potential tenders and their clients' clients' historic tenders and their use of SMEs and their preferred frameworks by work type, all really rich information that will massively help when it comes to qualification. And at that macro level, reviewing PPNs and government digital strategies can also be helpful to see where the market is likely to expand and contract over the coming years. Defence spending being a hot topic example of that at the moment. So this market research should go hand in hand with your target account list. Look at the macro trends where government is likely to invest in the future, track that to a department, then niche down to the areas that you would add the most value to in that department, and then finally the individuals responsible for providing that value, and that's your target account list. So competitor analysis. Why you are doing market research as part of this pre-bid stage, we would also look at competitor analysis. So who are we likely to be bidding against in the various stages of the bid process where it's live, and then how can we win? Really is the question that you're trying to answer there. So it should be quite easy to compile a list of top-level competitors. Google, ChatGPT, Deep Research are all going to give you a list, an initial list with the right prompts. After that, I'd do deeper research into each competitor to map the competitive landscape. So what departments are they working with? Where are they deeply entrenched incumbents with multiple contract extensions and growth? All of that information, as I said, you can get from Tussle or extensive searches. So I work on the premise that it's really possible nowadays to find out who the incumbent is on any government tender renewal with the digital footprints that we as individuals and organisations leave everywhere. So this really should be part of your qualification process. So once you know who these competitors are, it's time to map out the strengths and weaknesses. And being honest with yourself here, putting the ego aside, where are you likely to lose? Are your competitive advantages really competitive advantages in the eyes of a buyer? So what would you stand out? How would you stand out to a buyer over the competition? What are they likely to really care about? All of that sort of information is what you should be gathering. So a lot of you already use our spend data tool for some of your market research. So for those that don't, the slides for this will be sent out afterwards, and then I'll have a link to that so you can see who is spending what and where across the public sector. Next, we're on to relationship building. So this is probably my favorite part of the pre-bid stage. It's where you really get to know both the market and more specifically your potential clients on your target account list. So it's about spending time really listening to their problems that your product and solution can solve, but those organizational problems that you as a sales or bid person can really work in partnership to solve with your potential buyer, like navigating their internal procurement process or co-developing a framework contract that works for all parties once you've been successful, and making sure that that comes across in those conversations, but sometimes in a bid as well. Having that deep understanding of the client already within your bid is always going to help. So it's really about meeting people here. So get into physical events. I prefer smaller niche events like the ones Think Digital put on for really getting to meet people. Here I can have conversations outside of a procurement process that will really help me find out what's important to the potential buyer and where I should, and just as importantly, shouldn't be looking to work with various organizations. So if you're looking to build relationships with an organization, it's absolutely worth responding to soft market tests and pins, prior information notice. So it gets your name and your ideas in front of the potential buyers and shows you're willing to provide value before expecting something in return, a really important part of the sales and bidding process. So this needs to be balanced, obviously, with your available resources, of course, but again, it comes back to the target account list and building a small number of deep relationships across the public sector. So building trust with the procurement and end user teams is massively important. This is often best done before a tender is published in the pre-tender stage. So get to meet them where you can and follow the rules of engagement, of course. Some teams will be easier to meet than others, but it is possible. Last year, I met with 3 seniors from a procurement team from one of the largest departments in government. They gave me an hour of their time. They walked me through exactly what they expect from SMEs in the bid process, which frameworks they would use for which type of work, a detailed run through of their forward look pipeline. And they were really keen to have more SMEs in their ecosystem and understood that investing that time like this was a surefire way to get an SME to put in high quality bids in the future, and the way we would view their organization. Partnering is another great way to build relationships. We're often putting Advice Cloud clients together to make great partnerships that build great things for government. Recently, it's been putting together more sort of UX, UI, front-end design type outfits with engineering organizations, because the UX, UI design organizations win a lot of stage 1, discovery work. But they tend to fall away a bit after that as the alpha beta requirements focus more on a technical build. The engineering organizations tend to miss out a lot on the early stage discovery work because they don't have the right experience to do it. But putting the two together to form a partnership, well, that ensures continuity and shared ways of working in the supplier ecosystem, and an opportunity to work with 2 expert organizations in their field over a single end-to-end supplier. So, and then other opportunities can arrive for both the organizations off the back of that on pieces of work published on frameworks or lots that either company might not be on as the partnership develops, and then they can sort of get into co-bidding and things like that as well. So the next bit here we have is qualification. So massively, massively important. And what we've been through just now is sort of 5 stages that can all be done pre-bid before anything is even published on a framework or a portal. And doing all that will give you a wealth of information and knowledge that is going to hugely inform your qualification process. So you've done all your pre-bid work, and now the bid is live. So qualification needs to be thorough but swift. You're essentially about to commit to a sizable amount of internal resource and a mini budget and a mini project, or a mini budget for external support. So you really need to be sure that it's worth it. So how do we work out if it's worth it? Well, the definition of worth it will be different for every company or every department within that company. Overall business strategy plays in. So you trying to gain market share, get that all important first public sector win or case study, maintain a certain profit margin, grow at any cost, or work with only existing customers in a specific department, or just get steady growth. I mean, it's going to be completely different for everyone. But the first thing to look at is, can you bid the thing? So will you pass the minimum entry requirements that allow you to bid this? But also, do you have the internal capacity, or can you get it externally to really do an excellent job on the submission? And that's a real no go point. So work that bit out as soon as possible, ideally within 24 hours or less of when the tender's published. Early on in my career, I won a £9 million cold bid with a central government department. And at the time, it was rather wonderful. Huge upside, great client for years, and set the company on a steady growth path. However, what that also did was give me a complete false sense of security and a tendency to punt in cold bids for the next few years after that. And I shudder to think of the amount of time that adds up to working on bids that we were never going to win. But since seeing the error, I've employed a tight qualification process that really focuses on these 4 main areas. Building a unique scoring system that fits your company sales strategy is really simple to do and an absolute must. What's hard is sticking to it when a bid comes in. Because we all look at the total value and imagine it in the pipeline and what it will do for us and the company, and we sort of rarely think about the impact of the wasted resources on a losing bid. So it can sometimes be helpful to list out what the team could do with the time if they didn't have to work on a bid as a counterbalance to see if the investment is worth it. So why bid qualification is so important and matters? Well, resources are almost always scarce in an organisation. So having them is always a benefit, and not bidding things you will never win is a great way to keep them. It's also demoralising for a bid or sales team to keep taking punts and losing. I mean, sometimes needs must at the very early stages of a startup, but any more than that, it's really demoralising. I often qualify things multiple times as well. So once when it comes out, where we're going to go for it, and then potentially again at stage 2, or when clarification questions have been answered, just to make sure this new information means that it still fits my qualification criteria. Qualification is also a team game, so getting insight and information from peers can be hugely valuable. And when done right, it can expedite the qualification process rather than slow it down. So once you've nailed this process, then it can scale as you do. It's likely that your criteria will change at least every year as the business evolves and has different priorities. So if you are still working off the same criteria from a few years back, then it's good to have a refresh and still make sure the qualification process matches the aspirations of your organisation today. So that's really the pre-bid process and a few hints and tips that you can deploy to improve win rates ahead of things being published. And then, of course, you're into the bid process itself. Not something that I'm going to cover today, but as I said, we'll be doing another webinar on the bid process next month, and then I believe the post-bid process the month after that as well. So how can we help? Well, often the pre-bid process is done by internal teams, but clients on our PSG, Public Sector Growth Engine service, they do get help and input from us on that. If you'd like to know any more about it, you can contact me after this webinar and I can take you through it in a bit more detail. But essentially think of it as almost a complete bid team as a service, helping you improve those win rates. We also have an ad hoc service where we can support you on all the elements of the bid process. This is where you've got an upcoming tender or a very recently published one that you need help from that external reviewer writer. We really put ourselves in the mind's eye of the buyer, and we do that sort of pink, amber, red review service. Essentially, for that, you would buy a block of hours, you draw down on them to help you create an outstanding bid. And then I touched on our framework service earlier, but we're currently taking reservations for G-Cloud 15 at the moment. So if you'd like any help with your submission for that and a guaranteed entry, then give me a shout and we can arrange a call on that one as well. So that's pretty much everything from me today. So Danny, I think we were going to open up to a poll or a Q&A.
Yeah, we'll do a quick poll, and then everyone, there is a Q&A that we'll be doing. So on your browser there is a questions panel. If you could chuck any questions that you have about what we're talking about today into there, we can I'll ask them to David. But yeah, start off just a quick poll to cap off everything there from David. I'll just launch that.
Cool.
And we'll just leave this up for a bit and get some responses in, and then we'll share the results of these. Oh, thank you. Okay, I'll probably close that down now and share your results. Thank you. Yeah, thank you to everyone. Everyone found it useful. That's great. Thank you so much. We'll be doing another one of these coming up next month. We'll be covering the bid stage. We've got some questions coming in now. Yeah, so I'll kick off with one question for you. How specific should our target account list be? Is it better to go broad with our target accounts or go into a deep dive?
Always deep rather than broad. It really just means that you'll build more meaningful relationships, and you can sort of tailor your messaging and case studies towards those accounts and the problems they're having and the value that you bring. And you'll improve your qualification process as well, because you'll understand their needs better.
Awesome. Yeah, one's come into the box now. It says, in central government departments, which is more important to build a relationship with? Is it procurement teams or technology leads?
That procurement teams or technology leads is a very good question. I would say it is both. So you need to be as good at sales as you are at bidding in central government nowadays, which means you need to build relationships with that procurement team as to how they like to buy and the rules of engagement and things like that. But then you also need to build relationships with those end users and your buyers as well. It has to be both. You can have the greatest relationship ever with an end user or buyer that you can even be the incumbent. I've been working with them for 10 years. If you don't score enough points on that procurement exercise, you won't be getting through to round 2 in most cases. So it becomes sort of null and void. So I would say equal amounts. And sorry, just to add to that, I often find that people assume that procurement teams are sort of sitting in the basement, very closed off to the rest of the world and not available to approach. As long as you're outside of an official procurement process and you've got genuine questions, then I've found them very approachable most of the time.
Cool. Someone else asked, do you think we should start doing our win strategy, win themes before the RFP ITT lands?
Yes. Especially if it's something that you already know is going to land, which I'll assume from the question it is. You should absolutely be doing as much as you possibly can before. Now, just because that's going to save you so much time, you would iterate it as you go through, but be as prepared as you possibly can be.
Cool. Another one here. Are there any fundamental differences in your approach to developing relationships in the public and private sectors?
Not really, though. On the private sector, I'd probably lean more towards end user buyers than procurement. But that really does depend on the organisation. Some of the larger public sector organisations, it can actually be where procurement leads everything. Depends what it is you're selling, the value of it, and actually whether it's a product or a service. But yeah, maybe a slight more lean towards influencing the end user than the procurement team in private sector than public.
Cool. There's a few questions come in saying, will the recording be shared or will the slides be shared? Yes, we'll send around the recording and a PDF of the slides after the session, as well as details to how to get in touch if you have any more questions. We have another question here. What's the best way to start building relationships with buyers if we're brand new to this and have never engaged with the public sector before?
Think value rather than sales. So I've never met a buyer that doesn't have much to do. So buyers are generally time poor and usually pretty skeptical of cold outreach, to be honest. So the key is to sort of show up in their world. So if there is some sort of webinar, roundtable, industry event that you think they're going to be at and you can get to, then that can be a nice way to do that first introduction. But also sharing relevant stuff that you think is really going to solve. Well, first having found out what you think their problems would be, and then secondly sharing relevant stuff around how you've solved that problem. And then sometimes the more official routes, I suppose, like early procurement, early engagement notices, or soft market tests and things like that. As I said before, it gets your brand and gets your brand and what you do in front of those potential buyers. Gets them thinking about you within that process.
Cool. Oh, more coming in now. How do you approach a customer who doesn't want to talk to you and engage before the procurement?
Might need a bit more information on this one, but I suppose why don't they want to talk to you? Like, do they have the problem that your solution solves? Do they need it? You should never sell anything to anybody that doesn't need it. So yeah, I would. Well, basically, they don't see the value. They don't see the value in engaging with you. So the question is, how can you make them see the value? And you can do that by first working out what their problem is, then showing how you can solve that problem. So there's always a value question whenever people don't get back to you.
Awesome. Do we need to get certifications to bid for contracts, 3G, ISOs, stuff like that? Do we need them before we bid for contracts?
Sorry, did it mention a specific framework there, Danny, or just public sector in general?
It mentioned basically as an example ISO qualifications and certifications. So basically saying, do we need these before
Right.
before we bid for opportunities?
Well, you need to get on the frameworks before you do anything really, or DPSs and things like that. And those frameworks will have their own criteria depending on what ones they are, and usually how big the values are and things like that. So you will for some, yes. For most, in fact.
This is an interesting one. As a salesperson, how do you get your supporting internal teams on side and prepared before the ITT lands?
Really good question. You've got to show them what's in it for them. So, you've got to have done your research. So, how sure are you that you're going to win this thing? If you're the person that just keeps turning up every month with loads of opportunities and you've done no research and you've built no relationship and it borders on a punt or is one, they're very quickly going to lose faith in you. And then from then on forward, everything will get ignored. If you show up with showing your homework, so go, look, this is my area, these are the people that play in it. These 6 opportunities came out this month, and I'm choosing this one or these 2 for us to go after, and this is why. Then they're way more likely to be bought in to your journey, and you'll be more likely to win it as well. So you've really got to show your work in, do the homework, and then bring it to those internal teams. Secondary to that, they've all got other things that they will be doing. So this has got to show up as more valuable than the other things they're doing. So see if you can find out what those things are, and equate that value for them.
Awesome. So we've got two questions that kind of link together here, but I'll ask the first one. They're both about experience and case studies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asks, how useful is experience in provision to local government when selling to central government?
It's a good question again. It kind of depends on the buyer. So really carefully read the wording in the tender. Some are really specific about we need 3 case study examples of having done this in central government. Some just want public sector, and some I've had before like actively want private sector because they want fresh ideas and new ways of doing things and things like that. So I would see what comes out of the wording in that tender. Secondly, you might want to ask a clarification question on once you've got a specific tender. But if you're talking more broadly, I'd say the short answer is it depends on the buyer. But what you can do is it's not all of local government is equal. Some are far bigger than others. Same within central government. Some departments, some length bodies are much smaller than huge central departments. So just have a think about that. Like when you're writing that case study or that comparison, think about, well, if this public sector or local government organisation was 2,000 people and this arm's length body is also 2,000 people and has a system architecture that's similar or is based in a similar geographical location, then really pull those bits of information out from your case study to showcase it if that's what you're trying to do, go from local to central.
Awesome. And to follow up on that again with about experience in case studies, for the smaller providers with less bank of case studies, how do they break into public sector opportunities?
Through grit and determination. Right, so it's unlikely to be a swift process. Can it be done? Absolutely. I've done it myself a couple of times. So partnerships could be a good one. So where can you add value to people that are already working in the public sector, and being upfront that you can sort of claim the work on the case study and make it publicly available and things like that afterwards could be one route in. Two is finding things that are relevant. So you may have, right, what example? You may have done work in the financial sector, for instance, on data analytics around, I don't know, something to do with finance. There may be a tender that comes out from the British Business Bank, which you can see there's immediate similarities there. So those sorts of things are what you should be bidding and looking at, rather than just random or cold areas of the public sector. I would also, going back to what I was saying about offer and target account list, pick a piece of the public sector to focus on for probably 12 months. So are you going to go to health? Are you going to go higher education, local government, central government, whatever it might be, and really sort of stick within that lane to see if you can build traction there, rather than a scattergun approach of getting on every framework and doing everything else.
Nice. Just a couple more at the moment. So Ed said we have got time. So if you have any more, do chuck them in. This one might be a bit more technical, but someone asks, as a non-UK supplier, do you need a UK VAT number, and do our subcontractors need a UK VAT number in order to apply for bids?
Mostly, I think is the answer to that. Yes, but it's really a case by case basis. Depends what framework. But I assume we've got the details of who asked that question, so I can ask the delivery team to get a more specific answer and send that to you afterwards.
Yeah, I think they did clarify that they were thinking about DOS and G Cloud specifically, but I don't know if we know the answer of that off the top of our heads at the moment.
Yeah, we'll ask the delivery teams there and get back to them.
Brilliant. And I promised that this one is actually asked, and it's not in here just for us to plug our services. It was actually asked. Someone does say, did we say that we operate a no-win, no-fee model, and what are those? What services does that apply to?
It's not no win, no fee on tenders, just to be very clear. It's for our framework service, and it is a case of we're very, very experienced at getting people onto these frameworks. So we're so sure of ourselves that if we take on your business and we're not able to get you onto the frameworks for some fault of us, then we'll give you your money back if you don't get on, obviously.
Awesome. Yeah. So there's probably one more. There's probably one question we'll do. There's no more coming through, so maybe one more just to cap it all off. What is the biggest mistake you see SMEs make at the pre-bid stage?
Probably just trying to go in cold at a bid stage instead of doing any pre-bid work. Sort of just sort of getting on a framework, waiting for a tender to land before engagement. It's usually people that haven't worked in the public sector before kind of can sometimes sign up to a framework and just think, oh, this is going to be loads of opportunities pumped to me and I'll just bid them and win them. But a lot of the time, really successful suppliers have probably already engaged, sometimes influenced the scope and things like that, but at least raised brand awareness with that organization and the buyer before it's come out. Other things are probably not qualifying hard enough. I think we're probably all guilty of this at some stage. You chase everything in a bit of desperation to fill the pipeline, when in reality, you probably could have done one bid instead of 6, gone away for 2 weeks, and you still would have had the same amount of pipeline. Yeah, so they're probably two things that I see quite often.
Nice. Well, that's all the questions and all from me.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. And as we say, we'll have another one next month on the bid process and then one for post-bid after that. Thank you very much.